Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're continuing our Big 12 football predictions today, and our next team went a disastrous 1-11 last year, but returned 17 starters and are looking to get back to their winning ways. They are the Baylor Bears. We knew Matt Rhule was going to have a major rebuilding project when he took the job at Baylor, but no one saw him going 1-11 in his inaugural year with the Bears, including a shocking upset loss to Liberty in the season opener where the Bears were 30-point favorites. So it was a very disappointing year for the Bears last year, but they have a lot of signs pointing up this year and tons of room to improve. Obviously, they have 17 returning starters this season with 9 returning starters on offense and 8 returning starters on defense. They finally found themselves a quarterback. They really didn't have a true, really feel-good starting quarterback in Week 1 last year against Liberty, but they finally found it midway through the season with Charlie Brewer, who put up some good numbers last year, was actually named Big 12 Freshman Offensive Player of the Year last year, so they have a lot of consistency there. If he can stay healthy and put up some big numbers like he did last year, this is a Baylor team that I really expect their offensive numbers to improve a lot. They have Jonathan Lovett at the running back position. They have some solid wide receivers, a very solid wide receiving core that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. They are going to be led by Jalen Hurd. I'm sure you've heard of him. He is a transfer from Tennessee. He's going to come over. He put up some big numbers at Tennessee, should put up some decent numbers here at Baylor. I'm very excited to see how he does. You also have Chris Platt and Denzel Mims, the leading receiver for the Bears last year, who had over 1,000 yards receiving in the 2017 season. They also return all 5 of their offensive linemen. So this is the Baylor offense whose numbers should improve a lot and will be a lot more competitive in Big 12 play this season because they did not put up a lot of points in Big 12 play and overall just over the entire course of the season last year. On the defensive side of the ball, they returned 8 starters, going to be led by Greg Roberts, Ira Lewis, and Tyrone Hunt on the defensive line, so a very solid line there. You've got Clay Johnston at the linebacking core, leading of the linebacking core, and Harrison Hand and Graylin Arnold, leaders of the secondary. So this is the Baylor defense that wasn't great last year, let up a lot of points last year, but should really improve this season. And this is a Baylor team that have 4 very close losses. They lost to Liberty in that season opener by 3, lost to Texas San Antonio by 7, lost to Oklahoma by 8, and lost to West Virginia by 2. So had they won all those, they were a 5-7 team. So they have the talent to compete against some decent teams. They just weren't able to get the job done. When they open up the season against Abilene Christian this year, another FCS school, and I think we can all rest assured that surely Baylor will take care of this FCS opponent, much like they were not able to do last year against Liberty. I have faith that they will actually start off the year 1-0 this year, unlike last year, a solid win there. And then on the road against Texas San Antonio. So you knew things were looking bad for Baylor when they lost to Liberty last year. But we, over the course of college football history, have seen plenty of decent teams lose to an FCS school, get majorly upset, and still have a solid year. But you knew things were going to be really bad for Baylor when they lost in Week 2 at home to a Texas San Antonio team that was okay, but not great, losing to them 17-10. So the fact that they were only able to muster 10 points against Texas San Antonio, you knew things were going to be rough for Matt Rhule in first year with the Bears. This year it's on the road, but Texas San Antonio only returns 10 starters, has a lot of questions on both sides of the ball. Baylor, much more improved, should go on the road and start off 2-0, unlike starting off 0-2 last year. And then they get Duke at home, and last year they went on the road to face Duke and only lost 34-20. It was somewhat close for about half the game, maybe 3/4. The Duke pulled away. And this is a Duke team that I like a lot this year, but has a very difficult schedule. This was a game that I went back and forth on. Could really see Duke coming into Baylor and winning this game, and I could also see Baylor stealing this one at home. Duke, I love Daniel Jones. At the quarterback position, David Cutcliffe, one heck of a head coach. Tons more experience with his respective school than Matt Rhule with Baylor. But I'm going to give Baylor the win here. I think they're going to be high on themselves. They've got they start off 2-0, not against great opponents, but it's a better start than last year, and tons of experience. So if they're healthy, if they don't have any major injury, I think they have a decent crowd to start off the 2018 season against a solid Power 5 opponent, and I think they get a win over the Blue Devils. That's going to be huge for Matt Rhule and this Baylor team. If they can start off 3-0 with a win against a solid Duke team, that's going to be good, not just only for morale, but for a potential bowl berth. You're halfway to bowl eligibility there. You've only got to win 3 more games. They're going to get their 4th win at home against Kansas, the lone win in Baylor's 1-11 season last year, winning that game 38-9 over the Jayhawks. And that game was on the road. This game, could be a little bit interesting. This is a game between the two teams that returned the most starters in the Big 12 this year. Baylor returning 17 starters, Kansas returning 19 starters. So a lot of talent coming back for both of these squads there. Not going to be a national, like, you know, their ESPN highlight game or anything, but still an intriguing game. But Baylor should get the win over the Jayhawks. I think Kansas is still a little bit away, and we could see the end of the David Beatty era with the Jayhawks. On the road against Oklahoma. Obviously a tough game. Obviously Oklahoma probably still the top dog in the Big 12 despite losing Baker Mayfield. Obviously the biggest loss this season. Baylor's going to have to go up against probably another solid dual threat quarterback in Kyler Murray. Lincoln Riley going to have his team prepared. Last year Baylor hanging with Oklahoma for the majority of the game, only losing that game by 8 points. So really giving the Sooners a tough test at home. That would have been a huge signature win for Matt Rule in year one. This game, though, being on the road, Oklahoma returning too much talent and too much speed on both sides of the ball. Baylor, I think, could hang with Oklahoma since they might have some questions early on in the season for maybe about a half or so, but Oklahoma will pull away. That's going to be a victory for the Sooners, and Baylor's going to get their first loss. But they are 4-1. Not a bad start. Things get tough, though. Once they hit Big 12 play, after that Kansas win, things are going to get really tough for the Bears. You got Kansas State back at home. You know, a Kansas State team that I really like this year. I like Alex Delton at the quarterback position. I love Alex Barnes at the running back position. A defense that only returns 5 starters, but has plenty of talent and plenty of experience overall on the defensive side of the ball. So, yes, it is at Baylor, but I think Kansas State's offense is just going to be too much for this Baylor defense. Kansas State's offense returning 8 starters total. And a Bill Snyder-led team. He always gets the most out of his teams. I think they're going to be able to come on the road and get a win over the Bears. So their second straight loss in conference play. On the road to Texas, I can put a pretty emphatic L right there. And that's no disrespect to the Bears, but this is a Texas team that I really like this year. One that I think could surprise a lot of people. And, you know, everybody, every year, and I've said this in all my videos, every year everybody says Texas is overhyped. And people think they're going to do too much, and they always are a major letdown. And maybe that'll be the case. It has been the case in years past. But I think Tom Herman is a different coach. He's different than what we've seen, especially under the Charlie Strong area. A lot of that overhypeness these past couple years have been under Charlie Strong, and he never was able to live up to the hype. Texas, though, so much talent on both sides of the ball. I think they're a legitimate threat to potentially win the Big 12 and really a legitimate threat to Oklahoma. I just don't see Baylor having enough talent, even with 17 returning starters, to come on the road and win over the Longhorns. A much-needed bye week after 3 straight losses. Then on the road against West Virginia, a team that, as I've said before, I'm extremely high on. You're putting up a Baylor defense that does have talent, don't get me wrong, has some talent, against one of the better offenses, I think, in the entire nation, with Will Grier and a solid wide receiving core, one of the best in the nation there with Gary Jennings and David Sills, who had 18 touchdowns last year. Gary Jennings having over 1,000 yards receiving, David Sills close to that. I don't see Baylor going on the road and beating the Mountaineers, even with a week of rest. West Virginia also having a bye week before this. So you put up against a solid offense with the Mountaineers, a week of rest for them as well. I don't see any signs pointing to a Baylor victory. So a loss there as well for the Bears. And right now they're 4-4. So they're right at 500. It's disappointing, but it's a tough stretch. This is a tough Big 12 slate here, and the 3 of these 4 games that they lose are on the road to arguably the 3 best teams in the Big 12, Oklahoma, Texas, and West Virginia. I think they bounce back at home and get a huge win over Oklahoma State. And this is going to be, I know, criticized for this. I'm going to get a little criticized for this pick because Oklahoma State, yeah, is still a solid team despite losing Mason Rudolph and James Washington. They still have Justice Hill. I get that. They still have a solid defense. Mike Gundy, a great coach, great offensive guru. But I believe on November 10th, Oklahoma State faces off against Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma State is still in contention for a Big 12 title appearance or something like that, I could maybe see them overlooking a Baylor team that has lost 4 straight games, even though it is on the road for the Cowboys. Maybe you overlook Baylor, maybe you over-prepare for Oklahoma. I think the Bears catch the Cowboys off guard. I think they get a huge win over Oklahoma State, a team that I do not think will produce the same results that they did last year. Will still be a solid team, still get back to a bowl game, but not producing the same numbers or the same record as they did last year with the talent that they had. So a huge win for Baylor there. Could go either way, but I'm going to stick with them. Then on the road to Iowa State, they have 3 games left. They just need 1 more win to get to a bowl game, and they certainly have the talent to do it. I don't think they're going to get that bowl eligibility win against Iowa State on the road. An Iowa State team that I really like this year, returning 12 starters as well, 6 on offense and 6 on defense. Kyle Kempt at the quarterback position going to give, I think, this Baylor defense a fit. And even if they shut down Kyle Kempt, Iowa State has a solid running back in David Montgomery. This is a Matt Campbell-led team. He's done a great job with this Iowa State team. I mean, last year they beat Oklahoma and TCU, the number 3 and number 4 teams in the country at the time. Beat them both last year, went 8-5 last year. They're going to be a solid team, and Iowa State always a difficult place to play. Just don't see Baylor going on the road and getting a win over the Cyclones, even though it was somewhat close last year. The last 2 games, TCU and Texas Tech, both fairly winnable. I'm going to give them a loss, though, to TCU, even though it is at home. This is a TCU team that, yes, loses their star quarterback in Kenny Hill. Yes, loses a couple of defensive playmakers and some offensive playmakers, especially along the offensive line. Only 2 returning offensive linemen for the Horned Frogs this season. And they have to break in Sean Robinson, a new quarterback, who I think will do fine, especially at this point in the season. Look, the season's almost over by this point. If there were any problem with Sean Robinson, he's either going to be pulled or they're going to be fixed by this point. TCU, I think, might have the best defense in the Big 12 this season. So while it is at home for Baylor this year, TCU will still be a very dominant force with Gary Patterson as head coach. And so despite losing some key starters and despite taking a bit of a step back, I think they do get a win over the Bears, which means Baylor sets up a winner-take-all game against Texas Tech in Arlington. They win this game, they go bowling. If not, they miss out with a 5-7 record. Still an improvement from 1-11 last year. And unfortunately, I do think they lose to Texas Tech because Texas Tech could be in the same boat as Baylor. They might need this win to get to a bowl game. And as we all know, Cliff Kingsbury is certainly on the hot seat. If he doesn't get to a bowl game, he is out of a job in Lubbock. Even if he gets to a bowl game and loses, he might be out of a job in Lubbock. So Texas Tech certainly needing this win. This game being played in Arlington at the Cowboys Stadium. Texas Tech, 10 returning starters on defense and a very potent offense as always under Kingsbury. I think it's just too much for this Baylor team to handle. They'll certainly give them a fight. It will certainly be close, but in the end, I'm going to have them losing this game. They're going to play their hearts out because they know what's at stake trying to get to the postseason. I have them just missing out, though, with a 5-7 record on the year. And I think that's reasonable. I think you look at what happened last year, jumping from 1 win to 5 wins, including 2 wins in Big 12 play. A solid year for the Bears. I know it's disappointing, especially with the talent they have. They want to get to a bowl game. I just do not see that happening this year. The schedule gets tough after Kansas. They could very well lose to Duke. They could very well lose to Oklahoma State. Baylor could very well do worse than this 5-7 record. But I think they have too much talent, though, to just improve by 1 game or 2 games. I think they have to improve by at least 3 or 4. And maybe if Matt Rule plays his cards right, if his talent is better than we expect, maybe they pull off a couple upsets and get to 6 wins, maybe even 7 wins. That's a bit of a stretch. But maybe Matt Rule gets them to a bowl game in year 2 with the Bears, which would be one heck of a turnaround from such a disappointing season last year. So as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, on Instagram at The Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.